Welcome to the Utah Retirement System's webinar series. While this webinar has been pre-recorded, the information is still relevant. Please see the description below for links to the different sections within the video and other helpful information. We hope you find this webinar to be a useful resource in your retirement planning.
All right, so to begin with, just kind of want to get a sense from everybody of maybe how many years you've been in the retirement system. And so here up comes our first little quick question. So if you could just take a quick answer. All of this is anonymous, and just let us know basically how many years of service you currently have in the URS system. And this could be, even if you've been in the system at one point, quit, and then rejoined at a later point in time. Just helps to give me a sense of where everybody is in terms of the system. So nice. All right. So we have quite a few. Well, actually, folks are pretty evenly spread across the board, as it turns out. So lots and lots of years in the system. Excellent. All right. Thank you for that. That is very helpful as we continue on. All right, so just to kind of set the big picture, when it comes to retirement, obviously, you've been working all during your career and you've had a certain amount of income. And the idea in retirement is you want to replace a certain percentage of that. In our general philosophy at URS, we typically say, you may want to replace roughly, say, 100% of your income. When you're in retirement. And the idea there is that you just kind of want to keep your standard of living the same as all during your working years. Replacing that income can come from 4 different sources. A pension is one source, Social Security is another source that's commonly available, savings plans like 401ks and IRAs, and then sometimes other plans or other options such as continuing to work in retirement, or maybe rental income for real estate, from real estate, something like that. But today we're going to focus in on just the pension piece. But again, remember, it fits within the context of all these other different retirement resources. And typically, a lot of times that pension can be a pretty significant component. So one of the first questions I want to kind of throw at you, and this is just kind of again, another sort of common sense type question, if you will, or maybe not necessarily common sense, but just a sense of what's going on with, or how well you understand what's going on. We want to ask you, what exactly is a pension? So again, if you just want to chime in, answer pretty quickly. We won't leave these poll questions up too long. Let us know what you think as far as the answer, as far as what these different, what a pension might be. All right, give you another 2, 3 seconds, 5, 4. Now, wait a minute, somebody bit on a craving for Jell-O and then chose not to have the craving for Jell-O. All right, so that's just a bit of a goofy response. Again, we try to keep these things somewhat lively for you. Okay, yeah, so the pension is exactly what most of you have chosen. A monthly benefit is going to be based on your years of service. And that's going to last for your lifetime, however long you choose to live. And if you want, the pension could potentially also cover a spouse as well. We'll get into that here in just a little bit. All right, so moving on. So as we think about the pension, it's that fixed monthly income. It is based on how many years you work and what your salary is. There are options, again, to provide income for beneficiaries, and it includes cost of living increases. And that's what we're going to cover today. We'll go through all those topics today. To determine how many years of service, for instance, you might have in the system, a couple easy ways to find out. You can always log into your My URS account. Once you're logged in there, you'll be able to see on sort of the right-hand side of the overview page, it'll tell you how many years of service that you have up to this point. You'll also see your salary year to date as well. The other source of information for this is your annual pension statement. We typically send those out in early March. So hopefully several of you have seen those by now. Those you can get either through the mail, or they are always available again online through your My URS account as well. And so you can check check your years of service there as well. We do encourage you always, please, to look at least once a year at your years of service. And if that number is different than what you think it should be, if you think a mistake has been made, we would much rather find out about it today, much sooner, say, than later, because it's much easier if there has a mistake that's been made to correct it if it's within the last year or the last 2 years, as opposed to, say, 20 or 25 years ago. So again, if those numbers are different, please, let us know. And the folks to let know, that would be our pension department, our retirement benefits department. All right. When can you retire? So this is typically one of the big questions we get. When can I finally retire? When do I get to enjoy this pension? A couple common scenarios to think about. One is when you're age 65, have at least 4 years of service. Could be more, could be 5, 7.9, 18.3, 35. There's no cap. You can go as long as you want. But once you're 65, have at least those 4 years, you are good to go. You can start your pension at that point in time. Or the other common scenario is once you have 30 years of service. So, and again, age-wise doesn't matter at that point. So if you started at age 25, and I actually spoke with a lady yesterday, an employee, a state employee who was going to have 30 years, and she was going to be just under age 55 because she started when she was 24. And so she, if she wanted to, age 54, because she had the 30 years in, was good to go. She could start her pension, get a paycheck for the rest of her life. And so those are the two most common scenarios. Now there's a couple others as well, though. If you are age 62, have at least 10 years of service, you could also start your pension at that point. Perhaps you got started late in the system, for instance. Or if you're age 60, have at least 20 years, you can also start your pension at that point. Or any age once you have at least 25 years of service. Now, all three of those have little asterisks beside them, and the asterisk is there down at the bottom, and it indicates that there's an early age reduction if you're retiring under age 65 and you have less than those 30 years. So the early age reduction, maybe the easiest way to think of this is you're simply retiring sooner than what the actuaries expected. Actuaries are the folks who put pension plans together. They make all kinds of assumptions about how long we're going to live and what's going to happen to our salaries, inflation, the markets, etc. Normally, they assume you're going to be here, say, those 30 years. And over those 30 years, your employer has been putting money into this big bucket at URS with your name on it. And that's what we use to give you your paycheck the rest of your life. But let's say maybe I'm age 60. I've only got 20 years of service in. I need to retire because I need to take care of an aging parent or something like that. I'd rather keep working, but life happens. So I can go ahead and start my pension with those 20 years at age 60, but instead of 30 years of money being dumped in that bucket, only 20 years have been in. So roughly 2/3 compared to what a 30-year career would have been. So because that bucket isn't as full, but we still have to get you a lifetime paycheck, we can't pay you as much. We've got to stretch that money out still over your life expectancy. And so that's what that early age reduction is referring to. So let me ask you a question. Let's pull up another poll question here if we can, and see what you guys think about this. And this, again, is kind of one of those common questions that we run into, or common scenarios. So imagine you're retiring at age 62. And that's also, by the way, the earliest you could start Social Security. So which age reduction do you think is the most significant for someone? Is it somebody in the Social Security system? Is it someone in the URS system? Are they kind of both equally bad? Let us know what you think. All right, so it looks like a lot of us think that the pension benefit is the most significant reduction. Actually, as it turns out, the reduction for Social Security is much more significant for someone in their 60s. Just a quick aside, Social Security, your full retirement age nowadays is typically 66 or 67. You can start though as early as age 62. If you do, there's about a 7% per year reduction for Social Security, as it turns out. In the URS system, let me just show you, our early age reduction for someone in their 30s is actually only 3% per year. And so we run into this a lot of times, particularly when we're sitting down with you guys one-on-one and explaining, the advantages or disadvantages of starting Social Security early versus starting your pension, say, early. And again, this early age reduction only applies if you have less than the 30 years or if you're under age 65. But between 60 and 65, it's a 3% per year reduction. And in the Social Security system, if you're under your full retirement age, different ages, right, it's more like a 7% per year reduction. So a lot of times, the URS reduction, not so significant. However, if you're below age 60, then our early age reduction does get very significant because it turns out to be about 7% per year. So 60 or under, yeah, that reduction is pretty significant. So here's a simple example. So let's say I'm 57, got 25 years of service. Am I eligible to retire? Could I start my pension? Sure, I could, but I'm going to run into that reduction. Well, how much is it? Well, basic math, 5 years at 3% is 15%. 3 years at 7 is another 21%. So I'm going to lose about 36% of the dollars. Okay, this is the other thing to be aware of. This is not think of the easiest way to think of this is instead of getting 100% of my benefit at age 57, I lose 36% of it. So I get 64%. Sometimes when people look at our formulas, the formula we'll look at here in just a sec is 2% per year. So you might say, well, 25 times 2 is 50, right? So I should be getting 50%. 50, but I'm going to lose 36. So 50 minus 36, oh, I'm only getting 14% of my benefit. Nope, reduction doesn't work that way. Think of it as instead of getting 100%, whatever my formula happens to say, in this scenario, I would lose 36% of that. So I would net about 64% of the benefit. Now, don't get too lost in the math because we have some really good resources for you that'll help you figure out these reductions if you think you might run into them. But that's basically how the early age reduction works. So let me ask you this then. And again, this is just going to be another question for you is when do you think you might retire and why? So another chat question for you. What age do you think you might retire and why? And again, this is open-ended. You can say as much or as little as you want. This just, again, it's good for us to know, see some of the different reasons. So what age you think you plan to retire, and then why are you thinking about that particular age? Maybe you're worried about the early age reduction, maybe you're not, maybe you're timing it with Social Security. Who knows? Lots of different reasons. Wow, so we have folks all kinds of different ages. A lot, it looks like, in the 60s, some in the 50s, even some earlier ones than that. Health insurance sometimes is one of the reasons we sometimes see members stay on past their 30 years. For instance, Medicare doesn't start till 65. So a lot of times, if you have your 30 years in by your late 50s, early 60s, you may say, well, I got to stay on a little bit longer because I need health insurance until I turn 65. Okay, thanks for that. Very interesting. That's very helpful for us to know. And again, everybody's different, right? So your circumstances are different than your buddies. So, and we hear this all the time from members too. I was told always retire at this time of year or never retire at that time of year. Everybody's different. So what works for your colleague may be entirely different for you. All right, how does the pension work? Great thing about pensions, they are formula driven. So they're pretty simple to understand. We'll take your years of service, we'll multiply that times 2%. We look at your average salary over your 3 highest years. That's all that drives your pension benefit. So the only way to boost your pension, well, work more years, right? Instead of 25, work 30, or instead of 30, work 30, whatever. So the more years you work, or drive up that average 3 year salary, get raises, get promotions, change jobs, drive it up. Other than that, the pension's pretty autopilot until you get ready to retire. And then you'll have a couple decisions to make. And we'll talk about that here in just a bit as well. But again, only way to drive up that pension, keep working more years, get those raises, promotions whenever you can. So let's take a simple example, and we're going to assume this member winds up with a $40,000 average salary. So their 3 high years worked out to be $40,000. Put 30 years in the system. The member is age 62, spouse is age 60. What might their payout options look like? So there are 6 payout options in the URS Tier 1 system. And these are the 6 options. And let's go through and kind of explain these. Option 1 is what we call the single life option. It'll give you the most amount of money possible as the member, but if you're married, there is no spousal benefit. Okay, so option 1, most money possible, but if you're married, no benefit for your spouse. Now, if you live a long time, this can be a great option. On the flip side, if a few days into retirement, an accident happens, God forbid, or something like that, and if you were married, then your pension would stop at that point. So that's how option 1 works. Option 2 applies to folks who are in what's called the old contributory system. Typically, that meant you might have had service, say, back in the 1980s, or you're working for one of the very few employers that we have that still offer the contributory system. There's probably just a handful of those at most, though. Most of our members aren't in there. If you want to know, well, might that apply to me? A couple ways you can find out. You can, again, look at your annual pension statement, and on there you'll see, your years of service. We show your salary history as well. If you see on there a line that says contributory account balance, then that means at some point you were in the contributory system, or maybe you still are. But again, it only applies to folks who were in that particular system. And if you were, option 2, again, is also a single life option. All right, options 3 through 6, these are the married options. Option 3, you can think of as the 100% joint life. So it says whoever lives the longest, in this example, the member of the spouse, someone between the two of them is going to get that $17.64 a month. So as the member, I start off with it. If I pass away first, my spouse gets $17.64 for the rest of her life. Or if she passes away first, as the member, I keep receiving it. Okay, that's the 100% joint life. Option 4 is the 50% joint life. So 4 says, I start out in this example, maybe as the member $100 more, 110 more than option 3. If I pass away first, though, my spouse gets half, 937. Well, why would I do that? Well, it could be my spouse has her own retirement resources. Or she may think, well, once I pass away, it's just her. She won't need as much income because she's not paying for the expenses associated with me. I'm not playing golf every day or traveling the world or whatever my crazy retirement hobbies happen to be. Kind of a budget decision, if you will. Options 5 and 6 are the same as 3 and 4. Option 5 is the 100% option. Option 6 is the 50% option. A little twist on these two. Anytime you take 5 or 6, all you're saying is you think you're going to outlive your spouse. And if you do, if that happens, if your spouse passes away first, as the member, you go from, say, the option 5 amount, 1741, back up to the option 1 amount. Or if you choose option 6, same thing. So with 5 or 6, if my spouse passes away first, I jump back up to the option 1 amount. If I pass away first, and I've chosen 5, option 5, then my spouse continues on at the 1741, or if I've chosen option 6, she would get 930 per month. Here's the gamble, if you will. So I'm going to jump up to the $2,000 amount. So I pick up $200 and almost $60. Again, anytime I take 5 or 6, I'm saying, I think I'm going to outlive my spouse. It could be, for instance, my spouse is, say, 10 years older than me. Or maybe I've got longevity in my family, my spouse doesn't. Or when I'm right at retirement, I'm in great health and my spouse is in poor health. Who knows? Any one of those reasons. But that's how 5 and 6 work. All right, so those are the 6 payout options. And when you're at retirement, and this is an at retirement decision, so that's the good news. It's not like you have to decide today. You'll make this decision at retirement, and hopefully you'll know a lot more at that point in time as well. All right, so quick question for you guys. Let's think about this one as well. In terms of the payout options, as you look at these 6, think about which option you might be interested in. And again, just you can type in here in the chat system and you can say, well, which option are you going to take? 1, 3, 5, whatever. And if you want to say why as well, that's always interesting to find out too. Some of you may have different reasons for choosing 3 versus 5 or 1 versus 6, whatever the case may be. So which option are you thinking about taking and maybe why? What's your thoughts? What's your rationale for choosing one of those particular options? I'll give you just a couple seconds to give some thoughts there. Sometimes what influences those decisions could also be your spouse's retirement resources. Maybe they have Social Security, maybe they don't. Maybe they are in the private sector, they have 401ks. Maybe your spouse is in the federal system. They may have a pension there as well. That can also affect your decision in terms of which of the different options you have. By the way, once you choose that option, it's fixed. Okay, so you can't change your mind later on down the road. But again, it is one of those at retirement type decisions. And again, hopefully you'll know more by that point in time. All right. Okay. Well, let's continue on. Thank you for that. Again, always very helpful to understand some of the rationales. Second big decision at retirement is what we call the partial lump sum option, or PLSO. This is a one-time payment, and again, you get this right when retirement starts. It allows you to have 12 months or 24 months of your pension right up front at the start of retirement. Now, here's how this works. Again, here's the 6 payout options, exact same numbers we were just looking at for you as the member. Notice with the 12-month option, it's simply 12 times that option 1 amount, or $24,000. Or if you look at the 24-month option, it's 24 times 2,000, or 48,000. So if we stay in the middle column, the 12-month column, for instance, let's look at this real quickly. So with option 1, if I said, I think I'm probably going to live a really, really long time, into my 90s. I want the most money possible. I'll probably just take the $2,000. On the other hand, I might say, well, I'm a bit of a crazy person when it comes to retirement. I plan to be like some of our presidents, and I'm going to go skydive when I'm 80, or bungee jump when I'm 90, or cliff jump, or whatever it happens to be. Just on the off chance that I happen to pass away a lot sooner than I expect, I would like to be able to take some of this money and potentially make it available to kids, grandkids, anybody I want. So I might take that 12-month option and I get $24,000 right up front at the start of retirement. If I want, I can use the $24,000, I can go buy a car, I can go on a trip, whatever the case may be. It is taxable. So it would, in essence, kind of be like writing myself a bonus check. And maybe it might push me into a higher tax bracket. But I do have the option where I can take that $24,000 if I want. I can roll it directly to my 401k, and there is no tax or penalty. Now I have that $24,000 in my 401k. I go skydiving. And I overexert myself, sadly, because I'm 85 and I die of a heart attack, but I died doing something fun. Well, that 24,000, because it's now in my 401k, anybody can be beneficiary there. And so it could go again to kids, grandkids, spouse, charity, whatever the case may be. So sometimes Folks who are single going into retirement might take the 12 or 24-month option for inheritance purposes. They want to make sure if something happens to them, some money could go to kids, grandkids, whatever, and they'll roll that to their 401k. Tax wise, a lot of times it does make sense as a first step to take that partial lump sum, roll it into, say, my 401k, because there's no tax or penalty at that point for the rollover. Once I have it in the 401k, I don't have to take that money all at once. And tax advisors will typically tell you when you do start drawing money out of your 401ks, you want to spread it out over time. Don't take it all at once, because you take it all at once, again, it's that big bonus check. If you take it out in smaller amounts, spread it out over time, it helps you to stay in a lower tax bracket. Notice though, in the 12-month column, I get the $24,000 up front. Look what it did to my option one benefit. It dropped it $160 roughly. So the trade-off with the partial lump sum option, I can get more money up front, but I have a smaller monthly pension as a result, and that's a permanent drop. It doesn't jump back up 12 or 24 months later. Also, the 12-month or 24-month, it happens also right when you start retirement. So it's not like you're waiting 12 months to start your pension or to get the 24,000. So everything happens all at once right when you start retirement. But big picture again, upside to the partial lump sum, more money up front, but then again, it means a smaller monthly pension as a result, as a trade-off, if you will. And as you look at the different options, you can see how the dollar amounts change accordingly. All right? So that's kind of your second big decision at retirement. First one is, which of the 6 payout options do I want? Second is, am I interested in the partial lump sum or not? And what are some other reasons why people take the partial lump sums? Maybe you want to pay off your house, or you've got credit card debt, you want to start a grandchild college education fund. Again, all kinds of reasons. What's right for you is going to be different than what's right for a colleague. So again, you don't need to do the same as what everybody else is doing, because everybody again is different. All right, so let's have another quick poll question. So what do you think? Are you likely to take the partial lump sum option when you retire? And again, this is obviously not binding. We're just kind of getting a sense of, you think you might be interested in it, maybe the 12-month or the 24-month or nothing at all. And again, for those of you who are far, far away, it may just be, I don't even know yet, and that's fine too. We'll give you just a couple more seconds here. Look at that. So, okay. Interesting. Yeah. So a lot of folks are either probably far enough away or thinking, probably not really interested in that. And again, good news with this, you don't decide till you sign the paperwork, till you're at retirement. And obviously, circumstances may change as a result. But that's great. You have that flexibility. All right. Now, we just looked at those 6 payout options, right? That was just an example based on that $40,000 salary. Your numbers are obviously going to be different. Here's the really good news. We have a calculator right there on our website. If you click on the calculator link in the center of the page, it'll take you to our calculator page. On the left side, you will find retirement benefit estimate calculators. And you just want to use that very first one, retirement benefit estimate calculator. You'll put in just some basic data. These are very easy to use. Your date of birth, spouse's date of birth if you're married, how many years you have in the system or how many years you think you will have in the system by the time you retire, a retirement date. We retire folks on the 1st or the 16th, so make sure you use either of those dates in the calculator. Your salary, you'll also put in, if you think, for instance, let's say you're 5 or more years away, you might want to put in how much you think your salary might grow per year, 1% a year, 2% a year, 3, whatever it could be. Yeah, for that input, think in terms of cost of living increases, could be a merit increase, could be lane changes if you're in the school system, could be promotions. Okay, so again, just you can put in again whatever number you want. Typically, we see members will put in somewhere typically between say 1% and 3% for their salary increase over the years. That helps to sort of project what your final salary is going to be. You can also, if you want, there is a button there where you can input an adjustment for inflation. So if you want, you can put in an inflation adjustment. The upside to doing that, and again, typically, if you're, I would say, if 5 or more years, you probably would want to use the inflation adjustment. That just allows you to compare apples to apples, if you will. We typically use 2.5% as an inflation estimate. It basically, the idea is it's going to bring it back to today's dollars. It'll help you be able to relate to your salary today. You don't have to. Again, it's just an option if you want to. But particularly if you're 10, 15, 20 years away, that inflation adjustment helps you sort of, again, get a more realistic sense of what your pension benefit will be down the road. And then the last thing you put in, life expectancy, how long you might live. It doesn't affect the dollars whatsoever, but it can help give you some more information in terms of understanding your pension benefit. So again, pretty simple. You can use it as many times as you want. It's great for doing what if situations, what if I stay an extra year? What difference will that make? Oh, all right. Well, it added $10 per month to my paycheck. All right, I'm not going to stay an extra year. Or you stay an extra year and it adds an extra $100 a month. You're like, okay, maybe it's worth it. So again, you can use that. Don't use the calculator. You don't have to log in or anything to use it whatsoever. If you get into the calc and you're kind of like, oh, I'm not quite sure what I'm doing, you can always call us, ask for assistance. We will walk you through how the calculator works. Now, there are some ways to boost your pension benefit. Okay, and as we kind of talked about, obviously, if you work longer, right, work more years, that makes the formula grow up. Earn more dollars, higher salary, that makes the formula go up as well. There's another option, though, where potentially you might be able to buy some additional years into the system. We call it purchasing service. There are basically three sort of common scenarios. The first is, and this is probably the least common of it, but let's say at some point in the past, maybe back in the 80s, 90s, you worked for URS for a couple years, or URS covered agency for a couple years. You had a pension benefit and you wound up cashing that benefit out for whatever reason. A lot of times we hear this, I was in my early 20s and we were starting a family. I stopped working, so I cashed out my pension benefit, used it to whatever, buy a car at the time or whatever. And now here I am, I've rejoined the system 20 years later. You can actually repurchase those years that you cashed out. So, maybe I had 5 years, I cashed it out, say back in the 80s. Now I've rejoined the system and I've been working for 15 years. I can buy those 5 years from the past that I worked if I want to. There's a cost associated with it. In essence, what you have to do, whatever that dollar amount was that you took out way back when, you got to put all of that back, plus the interest those dollars would have earned, say, from whenever you did that back in the 80s all the way to today. Now, needless to say, that can be pretty pricey, but never know. But that's one way. Think of it as restoring some past service credit that you cashed out. That's one way of boosting your pension benefit. Don't see that happen a whole lot of times because, again, you would have had to been in the system, cashed out, and then rejoined. Another option, this is a little more common. We call this just service purchase, just a plain service purchase. This is where maybe you work, say, in another state. So let's say you worked in Colorado for 8 years as a teacher, and then you moved to Utah and joined a school district here. Now you were in our system. If you want, you could take those 8 years from Colorado and purchase them into our system here at URS. There's a cost associated with that as well. In essence, what you're saying, if you choose this route, is you relinquish, you give up or forfeit your Colorado pension benefit, those 8 years, and whatever those dollars would buy in the URS system, that then increases your years with us. It's not always a one-to-one type relationship. A lot of times it's not. So, 8 years in the Colorado system may only buy you 5.5 in our system. Depends on the level of benefits that the system you were a part of in another state might provide. But if, again, you did work in another state for a state, city, county, agency, whatever the case may be, you can buy those years into our system as well. The other option, this is probably, I would say in general, the one we get the most questions about is what we call future service purchase. Remember, one of those options, once you had 25 or more years in, you could retire at any age. So if you want, though, you are eligible to buy up to 5 years of service once you have at least 25 years in the system. Or the other, and this is a little less common, if you're age 65, you're also eligible to buy up to additional 5 years. But typically we see future service taking advantage of, let's say I'm age 60, right? Got 25 years in the system. I'm eligible to retire. Yeah, I know there's going to be a reduction. I'd rather not encounter that. Well, I can buy 5 additional years, 25 plus 5, that gives me the 30. Now I have no early age reduction whatsoever. Once you have 30 years, you don't have any reduction. You have to buy enough years, though, to get you up to 30. So if I have 27 years, say at age 57, I got to buy at least 3 years, got to get up to 30. Or if I have 28 and a half, got to buy a year and a half. It doesn't have to be a full year, whatever. It's just got to be enough to get you to 30 because we don't want you to encounter that early age reduction. And we have a calculator that can help you assess the cost of doing that, because again, there is a cost for that as well. Also on the calculator page, as we just talked about, under the retirement benefit calculators on the left side, second one down is the service purchase calculator. Again, pretty simple to use, date of birth, when you plan to buy it, how many years you'll have in the system, your average salaries, and it'll give how many years you want to buy, and it'll give you an estimate of what it costs to buy those years. In general, I would encourage you, if you're going to use that calculator, make sure you're sitting down. Has been known to make folks pass out because the dollars can be pretty significant, okay? Being quasi-serious there, but can be pretty pricey. Good news with this, though, if you are thinking about buying additional years, say through future service, or maybe let's just leave it at that. Thinking about buying future service, you can use 401k money, 457, traditional IRA. If you're in a school system, you could use 403b money. Any of those plans, there's no tax ramification for doing that. You're just shifting money from, say, your 401k pocket into your pension pocket. And the IRS doesn't care because you're not spending it, on food, clothing, whatever. So as long as you're just shifting money between plans, no tax ramifications whatsoever. It's not taxable, there's no penalty, anything like that. So that can always be a good reason to be saving in a 401k, an IRA, or whatever, because, life happens and sometimes you just never know. You might need to retire sooner than what you had planned on doing. And again, one way you can take advantage of retiring sooner, if you have less than those 30 years, you can buy future service as well. All right, what happens if you pass away before retiring? Okay, don't do this. But if you happen to, there is a one-time death benefit that the pension system pays you of 75% of your highest annual salary. In that one-time payment, that can go to a spouse, kids, grandkids, whoever you have named as beneficiaries. This, by the way, this is a benefit specific to the pension system. Your employer may also have life insurance, group life insurance that it provides. You may have your own personal life insurance, and those are all fine, but this is an additional benefit from the pension system. Beyond that, if you have, for instance, at least 15 years of service, you've been married for 6 months, you have at least 15 years of service, then your spouse could pick up your pension benefits, okay? Or say if you're age 65, or if you've got those 30 years in, whatever the case may be. In those scenarios, you, quote, qualify for retirement. You just haven't chosen to retire yet. Now, the math on this one can be a little bit tricky in the sense that, think back to the formula with me for 1 second. Let's say I have those 15 years of service in. We're going to use 15 times 2%, so that's 30%. So 30% of whatever my salary is, when if this were to happen, if you were to pass away, had 15 years in the system, 30%, we plug that 30% into the pension calculator, and the law says, now you've passed away, so you don't get a say in this, right? Unfortunately. But what the law says is you would choose the option 3. You would have chosen option 3 as the benefit option. So we'll plug that into the calculator, figure out the option 3 benefit with 15 years of service. If you have 15 to 19 years of service, you're going to get 1/3 of that option 3 amount. If you have 20 to 24 years of service, you get 2/3 of the option 3 amount. If you have 25 or more years, you get the entire option 3 amount. Okay, so a little off in the weeds, details, a little granular, if you will, but there is the, as I said, the one-time 75% benefit and kind of the magic number. If you get at least 15 years of service, your spouse will pick up your pension benefit. There's no early age reduction for the spouse, but they may not get, again, that full amount because they may only get 1/3 of it or 2/3, depending again on how many years that you have in the system. Right? So those are the two death benefits. Okay, try to avoid that if at all possible, because we want you to live a long time and enjoy receiving that benefit. And again, this only applies if you are married. If you're single, the one-time benefit would apply, the 75%, but the continuing benefit going to a spouse only applies. You got to have been married at least 6 months, and again, typically you're going to have, say, 15 or more years, as the case may be. All right, so home stretch. You've made it to this point. What are the steps to get actually ready to retire? All right, so what all are you going to do? 2 to 3 years before you think you're going to retire, we always encourage you to request a pension benefit estimate. Okay, the phone numbers are there for our retirement benefit department, 801-366-7770. So call, and again, they'll ask you a few questions. When do you plan to retire? If you're married or not, yada, yada, yada. We'll get all that information from you. The output of this estimate will look very similar to the calculator output that we just showed you. Currently takes 2 to 3 weeks to go through and get an estimate for you. We always want you to have this because sometimes we know if we run the calculators ourselves, maybe we put in, unrealistic numbers and things could, so garbage in, garbage out. You always want to put hopefully good data into the calculator. But just in case, we always like to have one where we actually pull this estimate from our mainframe so that you have a good sense of what we think your benefit's going to be. If you run the calculator and you're thinking, I'm getting $2,000 a month, I'm serious about retiring, and you say, great, I'm going to do that. Maybe you tell the boss even that you're going to do that. You request this estimate, and we come back and say, oh, it's only $1,000 a month. You're like, wait a minute, time out. What in the world happened? That's why, again, let us do this estimate for you when we pull it from our mainframe, because that is actually going to be based. We're going to go through and find those 3 high years, for instance. So always try to get that done. 2 to 3 years is kind of the ideal time frame. It could be 6 months before if you wanted to, but ideally, give yourself a little lead time so you know kind of what to expect. As I mentioned earlier with the calculator, we only retire folks on the 1st or the 16th. So it's going to be after your last day of work. You can stop working whatever day you want. If you stop on the 8th, well, we're going to retire you on the 16th. Or if you stop on the 24th, Salt Lake area along the Wasatch Front, or if you're in, say, Washington County, St. George, because we have an office down there as well. Our preference, make an appointment, come see us. Let's sit down face to face. We'll go through the paperwork with you. Our preference, again, is to meet with you and your spouse if they can come and attend as well. We want to make sure everybody really understands the difference between the different payout options or the partial lump sum option. However, we know sometimes, if you live far away, it's just not convenient. Travel's a hassle for you, depending on the time of year. You can also, if you want instead, we can mail you all the pension application information. You can fill it out. If you have questions, you can call. We can walk you through how to fill it out. So either option is fine. Again, our preference, if you don't mind, come to the St. George office, come to the Salt Lake office, sit down with us face to face, and we'll go through it. Couple things you're going to need. You're going to need a birth certificate for you. If you're married, you need the spouse's birth certificate, marriage certificate, a voided check, because we will direct deposit your pension paychecks. I'll talk more about that in just a second. But a voided check, that way we know where to send your pension payments. You'll have the retirement application to complete. You can also tell us how much tax you want withheld at the federal and state level. That's that W-4P. P just stands for pension. Very similar to when you hire on, you fill out a W-4, married, filing joint, give me 2 exemptions or 3 or whatever the case may be. So that's where you tell us how much tax you want withheld. You can change that too at any point in time just by filling out a new one. The beneficiary form, direct deposit form, again, these just tell us, where to send the money or if something happens to you, whom to send it to. All right, so quick polling question. So I mentioned all this paperwork. Boy, how long do you think it's going to take to get through that retirement paperwork? Again, just let us know what you think here. Give you just a couple more seconds. Okay. All right, now y'all are killing me. 2 hours? I mean, come on. Yeah, we're a government agency. We're not that bad. No, the answer is more like, 30, 45 minutes, kind of depending. So it's really not that long of a process. And again, that's kind of why we encourage you too to come and sit down with us so that we can meet with you face to face and go through all of this stuff. The other advantage, if you choose to meet with us face to face, a lot of it we can sort of have pre-filled out for you, kind of help move things along. And if you, for instance, taken the time ahead of time to get that benefit estimate, you've already hopefully then made your decision as far as which of the 6 payout options, which of the partial lump sum options that you're interested in. So, and advantages there. So actually, yeah, it's really not that long of a process. It'll click right along. All right, so as you get closer again to retiring, some things to think about. That first paycheck can take up to 90 days to arrive. The average is more like 60 days. Okay, worst case scenario, maybe there was a problem with your employer reporting a paycheck from 10 years ago or something like that, whatever. So if there's issues, sometimes it can take longer. But the average, about 60 days. So let's say you're thinking of retiring May 1st. June 1st, probably no paycheck. We've gotten some out as fast as 30 days, and we're working towards that goal. Probably July 1st is when you would get that first paycheck. Now, it is retroactive, though, to your retirement date. So I retire May 1st, June 1st, no check yet. July 1st, here comes my first check. It's going to be 2 months worth. Or, if it takes 90 days, it would be 3 months worth. So you're not going to be out any money whatsoever. It may just take a little bit of time to get that first paycheck to you. So you may want to plan accordingly. Otherwise, maybe you just do mac and cheese ramen noodles for a couple months, kind of like college again, right? Back to the good old days. The pension payment is made on the last business day of each month. So typically that means it's going to show up in your bank account sort of on the first day of the month, if you will. There is a cost of living adjustment or a COLA that comes with your pension. And this is a really, really nice feature. You may have seen on the news, particularly if you've heard other states and stuff, when they tend to get in financial trouble, they offer pensions. This is one of the first benefits that they'll strip out. And sometimes, these little inflation adjustments, cost of living doesn't sound like very much, but boy, if you live 20, 25, 30 years, these inflation adjustments can add up to some serious, serious money for you. It's paid annually on the anniversary of your retirement date. So again, if I retire May 1st, every May 1st while I'm in retirement, I'm going to get a little salary bump, an inflation adjustment. We just match what happens with the consumer price index, the CPI. That's what's calculated at the national level. Employers don't sign off on this. The legislature doesn't sign off on this. This is built right into the plan. And the most you can get in any one year is 4%. So let's say, for instance, last year, the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, was 2%, and I'm retired this year, I'm going to get a 2% raise. Or if it was 2.9% last year, this year I get 2.9%. Salary goes, my pension salary goes up automatically. Now, what if it's, say, negative, which actually it was in 2009, if I recall. So 2009, the CPI was actually negative. You may remember the economy was pretty awful at that point in time. Did we take money away from our members? We go, well, retirees, the consumer price index actually went down. We're going to take some money back from you. No, we just left things alone. Okay. So if ever it is negative, nothing happens. You just continue with the same pension payment amount that you've gotten. But let's talk on the flip side. What if, say, the inflation rate last year was 6%? The most you would get this year is 4%. What happens to the other two? We put it into next year's inflation bank, if you will. So let's say it's 2019, right? Let's say 2018 inflation was 6%. You're retired. In 2019, you get 4% because that's the most you can get. The 2% we put into 2020's bank, if you will. 2020 rolls around, you're already starting with at least a 2% bump, but we're going to also look at 2019. 2019 had its own inflation. Let's say it was just 1%. So we take the 1% from 2019 plus the 2% in the bank. So in 2020, you're going to get a 3% bump. If there's 2019 was 4% or more, again, the most you get in any one year is 4%. We carry the difference into the following year, and if it takes 2, 3, 4 years to get you caught up, that's what it takes. That's what we'll do. The last time that happened was probably the early 90s, because we actually did have inflation that was a little bit higher back then. But again, 4% is the most you can get. If it's more than that, we do bank it for you. You will pick it up eventually. Just over the last few years, sometimes we get asked this as well, what's happened with the cost of living adjustment? And you can see anywhere between 1.5%, say, and 2% is what the consumer price index has been doing over the last several years, and that's what URS has been paying as well. Note 2015, not much of anything, right? But again, inflation was pretty flat for that particular year. All right, taxes, because again, you want to think about this as well. The pension is subject to state and federal income taxes. As I mentioned, you can tell us how much you want withheld with that W-4P form. You can change it anytime as well. And then every year, typically in, say, January, early January, you'll get what's called a 1099-R. And that's just going to say, over this last year, your pension paid you $20,000. And it'll say on there, whatever 3,000 of it was withheld in federal taxes. That's what we sent to the IRS. 1099-R, kind of like a W-2 in that sense. It just tells you how much you were paid and then how much went to state as well as federal income tax. So you'll put that information on your tax form and then settle up with the IRS. And again, any particular year, if you're getting big tax refunds, you want less withheld, just do a new W-4P. Or if you're having to pay too much, you can do a new W-4 and say, I want more withheld. Again, very, very flexible. But pension is taxable. You've never paid tax on it, right? Your employer has been paying for this benefit sort of behind the scenes all this time. And so when that money starts coming out, Uncle Sam says time for him to get his cut as well. Finally, what happens if you want to go back to work after you retire? Okay, so these are the current rules. These are subject to change. Sometimes, typically in the legislative session, maybe every 5 years or so, these might be adjusted. But we go over these with you again when you are actually ready to file for your pension benefit. So what happens if I come back to work within 60 days? All right, so I stopped working May 1st. 30 days later, I rehire on. I'm like, oops, I really didn't want to retire after all, because being home for 30 days, I just got bored out of my mind. I'm going to go right back to work. In essence, we'll cancel your pension check. We'll put you right back in the system, almost as if you had never left. You continue to earn new service credit. You would need to stay around though for at least 2 years to be vested to keep that new benefit. Okay, vested just is this legal term that means you get to keep the money. So if you do quit, start the pension, and then rehire, try to stay on for an additional 2 years. Okay, again, assuming you're going to do this within 60 days. Now, what if you wait after 60 days? Can I come back to work for a URS covered agency? City, county, state, schools, special service districts, etc. Yes. Okay. By the way, post-retirement rules only apply to URS covered agencies. If you go to the private sector, right, go to work for a bank, a retailer, a restaurant, whatever, these rules don't apply. Federal government doesn't apply. Out of state doesn't apply. So this is only if you want to come back to a URS covered agency that these rules apply. So I waited the 60 days. Typical scenario, let's say I'm a school teacher, bus driver, right? I stopped working May 1st, right? School year's over with. I'm off for the summer. It's 90 days later. I can go back to work again for a URS covered agency. Got to make sure I get onto the right screen. Sorry. After 60 days, I go back to work for the school system. Maybe I'm a part-time teacher or part-time bus driver, whatever the case may be. I keep my pension check. However, I have to work in a position where I don't get any benefits, no health insurance, no paid time off, sick leave, anything like that. And in essence, I'm just working purely for cash, and we're talking part-time cash, because the most I can make this year, 2019, 16,743, or half of my final average salary, whichever's less. And in most cases, it's probably going to be that 16,743. That number that will be adjusted every year as well, but for 2019, that's the number. So again, real common scenario, want to come back to work. I just want to work part-time. I take a couple months off, take at least 60 days, come back to work. I'm working just for cash, just some extra spending money, no benefits of any type whatsoever. No gym membership, no paid time off, sick leave, health insurance, nothing whatsoever. That's if I wait at least 60 days up to 1 year, up to 12 months. Well, what if I stay out an entire year? Well, if you want to stay out an entire year, you can do that. You can then keep your pension. And if you do, once you've stayed out a full year, you can then get all the salary you want. There's no dollar limitation. You can also get all the benefits you want. You just won't get any new retirement money. So here's a simple example. So again, maybe I'm a teacher, right? I take a full year off and I go play, go travel the world, whatever the case may be. And let's say I'm age 60. Had my 30 years in, I'm age 60, I've been gone for a year. Now I can come back, teach again if I want to, because I'm kind of thinking, oh, you know what? Having the year off was great, but by golly, I forgot about health insurance. So I hire on again as a teacher. I keep my pension check. I get my full salary. I get health insurance, whatever all the other benefits are that the school wants to offer me, but I won't get any new retirement money. And the rationale there is I'm already getting my retirement benefit. So if you're happy with that, great. Again, rehire on after a year, unlimited salary, all the benefits, just no new retirement money, no pension money, no 401k money, none of that stuff. Now, as an employee, you can always voluntarily continue to save for retirement in a 401k or IRA, but your employer in this scenario can't add any new money to you. Or, other option, been out a full year, I can basically say, you know what, cancel my pension after the year, and in essence, again, just put me back into the system. Now I get all the salary, all the benefits, and now my employer can add new retirement money to my account, okay? But I have to give up my pension in order to do that. So it's going to be one or the other. Typically, what we usually see, most folks in that scenario, they're going to stay out a year, they're going to keep their pension, and then they hire on for the salary and sometimes for the benefits, okay? But you do have the option to, in essence, cancel or suspend your pension payment and put yourself back in the system if you want to. And again, these are the rules. This is part of the reason we want to sit down with you face to face, if possible, when you're ready to retire, because we want to walk you through all these different scenarios and make sure you understand the post-retirement rules. All right, so to sum up, again, we used an example where we had a $40,000 salary. The member had their 30 years of service. When we look at their current income, how much of their current income is going to be a broader educational experience, you can sign up for pre-retirement seminars. You're going to sign up for those online through your MyURS account. Those are really good for doing kind of the big picture, if you will. However, you always have the option too. You can sit down with us individually if you want to. And you sit down with us one-on-one. We go through, we'll estimate your pension, your Social Security, 401ks, kind of put all that together and let you know if you're going to be on track to replace 80% of your paycheck or 90%, whatever it works out to be. We offer these sessions all over the state. They're everywhere. We're in school districts, county buildings, city buildings, state buildings. We do these everywhere. We offer them in the Salt Lake office here as well. And you sign up for these again online through your MyURS account. I'll show you that here in just a sec, but let me ask you one last question. When do you think you can sign up for these things? So just real quickly, when do you think you can sign up for these things? Any old time you want? Do you have to be a certain age? Do you have to be within a certain number of months of retiring? What do you guys think? Okay, yeah, so I think most of you got the idea. These are anytime. So let's make a clear distinction between the two. If you want to actually file for your pension benefits, that's that 3-month window that we talked about, right? 2 to 3 months, let us know. That's to actually file for your pension. But if you kind of just want an estimate, you want to do some planning with us, you want to do some what if, you can do these sessions anytime you want. And in fact, the sooner the better. If you're a couple years away from retirement, do one of these. It kind of gives you a sense of what you could expect. If you're a decade or two away, boy, that gives us time to maybe say, hey, let's make some minor adjustments that can have a big impact on your retirement readiness down the road. Any and all questions retirement related, you can ask us in these sessions. So again, we encourage you to sign up for these anytime you want. To sign up for them, you do so online through your MyURS account. And again, when you're logged into the system over on the right side, you're going to click on the Education tab. I've got highlighted there. And once that your spouse is welcome to attend as well. We encourage you to bring them along because, again, we want everybody to know what's going on. If you get in there and you're like, oh, there's nothing near me today, well, it could just be that the sessions that were near you that day have all been taken, or we're just not in your neighborhood, that particular week. So maybe check back every week or so because we are adding new sessions all the time. And you want to, again, the sooner you can take advantage of these, the better. But come talk to us. You can do them multiple times as well. Typically, once we do the initial one, we'll say, if there's no big changes, maybe every 4 or 5 years, sign up for another one. Kind of think of it like a checkup. We just kind of update the numbers, see what's going on. But anytime there's big changes, if you get married or divorced or you get a job change, promotion, whatever, you can always sign up for these sessions as well. And again, any and all retirement questions are fair game. So come ask us. It's free, doesn't cost you anything. We'll give you our opinion as far as what we